for any group, not just black people. I mean, if some Indian person was to my Indian brothers out there, I'm like, who the fuck are you to be telling me how to think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, so two things are possible. One is that he actually got crosswise with the way Kamala wanted to message this. And that's actually my guess, because she has been very careful to not fall into the Hillary Clinton trap of being, actively contemptful of voters or messaging like she doesn't have to earn their vote, she's just entitled to it. Also, she's really avoided, thank God, this messaging around like what's important about this election is my trailblazing status. Like she has dodged all of that. Even you'll recall when she got asked that question on CNN by Dana Bash of like teed her up to trash Trump over his comments about she's not really black or whatever. She's just like, same old playbook, let's move on. And so I think it's likely that she's actually not happy about this messaging from Obama. It's also possible, though, that they feel like he has the cred to
I think you might be
lecture black. He doesn't. Nobody does. No one should, right? To lecture black male voters. Whereas, obviously, if it was her trying to pull that off, it would go even more poorly than it did with Obama. But I don't know. I thought with her pivot there, it seemed to me like she was actively unhappy about this direction. When we were talking to Logan previously, you mentioned that there is a lot of discussion online of like, oh, Kamala's doing this media blitz now because their internals must be really poor. And by and large, I think Logan's analysis of like, also it's almost election day and like, of course, the candidates are likely to be doing media appearances. I think that's largely true. But it does seem like there is a particular nervousness around black male voters specifically.
That is true. She's doing Charlemagne today.
As evidenced by this podcast, Charlemagne, the the policy proposals we're about to talk about and rip apart, the Obama comments, et cetera. There does seem to be some nervousness about that specific demographic group that they're kind of telegraphing in some of these moves.
Absolutely, because, I mean, look, it's a game of margins, and it's one of those where, I guess to stick on this point, everyone's like, oh, the internals must be bad if she's going on Fox News or Rogan. I'm like, what if the internals show that it's a 50-50 race? And if I had only a 50% shot of accomplishing the single most important thing I'll ever do in my life, I would be doing some crazy shit to make sure that got from 50 to 51 to 52, even 50.5 is better than 50. So maybe that's just me. But let's put B2 up on the screen just to set up, again, why this policy proposal is coming from Harry Enton over at CNN. No matter how you splice the data, Trump seems to be the strongest Republican with black voters since 1960. Young black men in particular have trended right towards Trump runs, cutting the Dem margin by 40 points from 2012. But Trump is doing historically well with black women too. So that is the key point, is that this is the biggest realignment of black voters, at least poised to be, since the civil rights era.
I want to say, though, that I'm reserving judgment until it actually happens.
Sure, fair.
Because we did see these same trends heading into the Biden 2020 run where, he was trailing how Hillary Clinton did, and there was a big discussion about this. And on Election Day, black voters overall showed up for him in basically the same numbers as previously. And there has been some polling that's been contradictory. And I put a lot of stock in the New York Times poll because they did a super sample of black voters. That means they had a larger groups that were able to look more, in detail at the data. But there have been other polls that have shown Kamala performing just as well with black voters as Biden did last time around. So to me, it's not definitive that this is going to manifest, but there's certainly been a significant amount of polling data that suggests it could. And as I said before, the Kamala Harris team seems to be projecting some nervousness that this trend with black men in particular could be the case.
Yeah.
I'm fairly persuaded with the numbers on how many new black women registered to vote and are showing up in the early voting periods in the states that we have data to say I don't think that she probably is going to have an issue there with black women. We also see women in general, this large gender gap in with women favoring Kamala and a large gender gap with men more favorable towards Trump. So I'm definitely more skeptical about the black women piece of this, but I think it's definitely possible with black men.
Yeah, definitely. And well, again, to underscore, I guess, the policy proposal, whether it's true or not, they seem to believe it, and they're acting in that way. So let's put this up on the screen. Kamala now has some new opportunity agenda for black men. Let me just go through it. Provide $1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. Support education, training, and mentorship programs that lead to good-paying jobs for black men, including pathways to become teachers. Protect cryptocurrency investments so black men who make them know that their money is safe. Launch a national health initiative focused on illnesses that disproportionately impact black men, and legalize recreational marijuana to create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. You called it peak neoliberalism, and I genuinely do think that is so accurate because, I mean, let's just fixate on this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to provide $1 million in loans to specifically people for the color of their skin. Okay, so we're going to do affirmative action.
It doesn't even say, it says black entrepreneurs and others.
Oh, actually,
so it's not even really clear
Maybe
that
you're right.
It's just like.
Okay, well, I guess then we're just cherry picking what exactly that means. Some of it will go to black people. Cool. We're going to support mentorship programs. I want everyone out there in your life to ask yourself if you want a mentor provided to you by the government. That's an insane thing to do. We're going to provide government mentor. Here is your government-issued mentor to make sure that you live a better life.
See, and that is some pure Obama era shit.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It really is. I mean, that was like My Brother's Keeper program and all of that. But yeah, I mean, I saw Perry Bacon Jr., who's I think he's still at the Washington Post, right? Columnist for the Washington Post. Previously at NBC, himself a black man, saying like, I don't really love the idea being put out there that black men specifically need mentors.
Right.
The other one that really gets me is, okay, crypto, let's just put a pin in that because I have a lot to say about that one. The health one, so they describe this in the greater detail part as a national equity health initiative focus from the National Institute of Health on illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. And this is where I really can dig into what I mean by this is the peak of neoliberalism. Why can't you just run on universal health care so that we don't have to pick and choose oh, if you got prostate cancer, maybe we'll care about that and do a health equity initiative, not even giving you care, but some study at the NIH, thank you very much. Or oh, if you need IVF, maybe we'll pay for that. How about we just have health care that would, yes, actually disproportionately benefit black men and other marginalized group, but would help everybody and, not be pathetically inadequate and patronizing as many of these things are. And that's what drives me crazy about this is we've talked about this ad nauseum, but it's just worth reminding people the policies, I'm not saying that it is never the case that it makes sense to have policies that are specific to a demographic group. I'm not saying that blanket across the board, but we know from history that the policies that have most improved the lives and economic status of black Americans have been universal policies, like lifting the minimum wage, like increasing rates of unionization, in a theoretical world where Democrats still cared about and talked about healthcare, universal healthcare. And so that's why this sort of let me do some niche little bullshit programs for some targeted demographic group drives me so crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, again, just to stick with it, and this is part of why the whole equity mindset is so stupid. When they're health initiatives on prostate cancer, it's prostate cancer is a cancer that affects most men generally, specifically people who are poor and unhealthy. If we talk about diseases that are the worst or most impactful on black communities, it's the same statistically for people who are poor and who don't have access to health care or eat a shitty diet. So it's not complicated to think about it that way. And also, if you put it that way, it sounds a lot better, right? Hey, all these diseases that disproportionately impact, men who are old, obese, diabetic, we're gonna try and fix that. That'll help black people, it'll help white people, it'll help everybody. There's a lot of poor white people out there too who also suffer from prostate cancer, from diabetes, and from a lot of this stuff. So that's nonsense. Look, on the weed thing, everybody here knows that I'm against weed, all right? I think it's bad. But if I was black and I was a man, I would be so insulted that one of the key pillars is, let's legalize weed. They're let's give you people drugs. Is that, how is that not so insulting to these people? To be they really like to smoke weed, right? What the fuck? We're gonna legalize drugs specifically for a specific demographic. If you want to, but she didn't even mention, that's one of those where, look, I don't agree with it. People are like, oh, black people disproportionately get arrested for it or whatever, or have in the past. So it needs to be, you know, redistributive of some criminal justice bullshit. Fine. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me still with the current data, but I could understand that. On this one, it's literally like we need to legalize weed, and we need to legalize it so that you can sell it and you can do a better job of being a fucking